Alright, as you guys watch this video, be sure to pause on the different slides to take notes when necessary. You should all learn from this. These were common mistakes I found as I've been reading through your guys' two paragraphs. Most of these examples come from your guys' own papers. So if I used some of your writing, please don't be offended. Nobody knows whose writing it is. Every paper had mistakes. There was not a perfect one. So please take your time watching this and take good notes so that way you're not making these mistakes in your own writing as you guys finish your essays. Alright, the first thing I wanted to show on this slide is repetition. So you don't want to repeat words and phrases if you don't have to, so you should constantly be thinking about how you can work on your syntax, which is sentence ordering, in order to get rid of repeated words and phrases. So if you're writing about reverse discrimination in this case, that phrase will probably come up quite a bit, but you can get rid of it by just thinking about some different tricks. So if you look at the way that this was written, these race-based policies are encouraging reverse discrimination. Reverse discrimination is when unfair treatment is put towards the majority group based on race, sex, or creed. If we rearrange it a little bit on the right side, you then have these race-based policies are encouraging reverse discrimination, comma, which, and then you start your definition of it, which is a direct quote. Next, I want to show you how that weaves in your direct quote into your own wording. It just sounds better. You really never want to have a sentence like on the left that the entire sentence is a direct quote. You want to weave direct quotes into your own wording like I did on the right. So that way they're not their own sentence. And then finally, make sure you're checking your formatting. On the left, they put a period after creed, and then the quotation mark, and then the end of text citation, and then a period. Again, you don't put a period, so the one on the right is the correct way. You do not put a period before your end of text citation after a direct quote. You wait until the end of the end of text citation. And then finally, direct quotes, remember, need to have a page number. If there are no page numbers because you got it offline, I will show you an example of how you do that in another slide. Alright, so like I was saying on the previous slide, a lot of you are using direct quotes as their own sentences, which is not good. So first off, when we did our evidence cards, I gave you that table to track all 8 of your evidence cards to make sure that you had variety among some evidence that was paraphrased, some that was summarized, and some that was direct quotes. Now, when you use direct quotes, so you want variety, but use direct quotes sparingly. If any of you ever plan on going to graduate school, you will not be able to, especially beyond if you go beyond your master's, not be able to use direct quotes in your research papers because they want to know that you know the information and can internalize it and restate it in your own words. So having more summarized and paraphrased evidence is better. But when you do have direct quotes, they should be weaved into your writing. So if you look at the pink part of that paragraph on the bottom, let's start with that sentence. So on the contrary, higher education institutions all rely on resources to function and operate. And according to Ascari, 2017, then our direct quote starts. It's the job of the administration to find and allocate the unrestricted funds needed to do the job, and then the page number. So I weaved that into my own writing. I started the sentence with my own idea, and then I finish it with the idea of Ascari. And then make sure that you're including the page numbers when you have a direct quote. Some of you are forgetting that. So I don't know, you might have to go back through and look for your page numbers where you got that information. Then finally, try to summarize and paraphrase more than use direct quotes. So the yellow parts of that paragraph are paraphrased and summarized information. Um, and so if I read the entire paragraph, there's only one little section that uses direct quotes. There's a ton of evidence in the paragraph, but direct quote takes up one single line of the paragraph. So there is no universal organization, method, or system for budgeting and allocating funds in higher education systems. Institutions have varying missions, visions, goals, programs, traditions, and even laws, which are all determining factors in how funds are allocated, and then the source where that information came from. On the contrary, higher education institutions all rely on resources to function and operate, and according to Ascari 2017, it's the job of the administration to find and allocate the unrestricted funds needed to do the job. The page number always goes at the end of the direct quote. So you'll see I'm using an in-text citation because I mentioned the author's name and the date before the quote, but you put the page number always at the very end of the quote. And notice that again, the punctuation mark, the period, comes after the page number. You don't have one within the quotation mark and then again after the citation. Additionally, because colleges and universities are not-for-profit organizations, they do not report their profit. Rather, they must report on how they used their money that came from each identifiable source, and then that source. All right, make sure your topic sentences for your body paragraphs clearly state what that paragraph is about, and then that paragraph only talks about that topic. So these are two good topic sentences I came across. So the first one, the history behind affirmative action, is very interesting as it has changed a lot from where it first started. I know that that paragraph is going to be about the history of affirmative action and how it has changed over the course of time. And they're going to explain all that to me. So if I was to only read your topic sentences once your essay is finished, I should get a very good idea of what your argument is and what you're using to back up your argument. Um, and then the other one, students, especially younger ones, already have a difficult time paying attention for 7 hours a day. So that paragraph should be about students having a difficult time paying attention 7 hours a day. So I would expect that that paragraph is going to have evidence that talks about the attention span of children and adolescents, and it's only going to talk about how children should not be in school longer than 7 hours a day because they're going to lose their attention span. It should not go into talking about teachers planning being more difficult. It shouldn't talk about sports. It shouldn't talk about any of the other ideas that go along with a 4-day school week. The student is advocating for to keep it a 5-day school week, and so that paragraph should only be about the attention span of students and adolescents and how it relates to um, a longer school day not being great for students. All right, you guys really need to work on staying in third person. It will make your writing sound so much more scholarly. So here are some examples. On the left, like every other problem in life, we must find when and where it all began. We is referring to the person that wrote the statement and whoever is reading their essay, so their audience. And I guarantee that we, the person who wrote this and myself, it is not our job to find when and where all the problems in life begin. Whose job is it? Who is we referring to? Is it referring to historians, scientists? If you don't know, then you need to take that out. So if they are referring to historians in this instance, they could say, like every other problem in life, historians must find when and where it all began, or change that to whoever they're referring to. Or you can always work with the syntax, which is your sentencing order. Um, and just take out, if you're not sure who we is referring to, then take that out. Like every other problem in life, it must be found when and where it all began. Okay. Then if we look on the right, if you, so you is referring to whoever's reading this, and that's me, shorten the week by a day, you are shortening, typo, the time students can talk to their teachers. You, which is referring to me because I'm reading this, it's not up to me to shorten the school week. So, who is you? Is it the school board? Is it the government? Is it school administrators? Who is you referring to? So, if you look at the second example, you could say, if the school board shortens the week by a day, they are shortening, another typo, the time students can talk to their teachers. And if you're not sure who is in charge of shortening the school week, then you just try to work on your syntax to get that taken out. If the school week is shortened by a day, students are losing time they can talk to their teachers. So again, the nice thing with language is we can reword it to make it work. So if you're not sure who we is referring to or who you is referring to, then reword your sentences to make sure they're in third person. So this was a question I was getting a lot when we were still in school, is how do you cite a source within a source? So my source was Zeller and Metzger from 2013, and on page 300 they mention another source, Morledge and Player. So when that happens, you, in your own words, you have to state the people that they were citing, but then in parentheses you put your source and put as cited in and then put your source. So that's just an example. And again, if you look at this, there's a direct quote, direct evidence, and it's weaved into my own writing. So again, you guys really need to work on that. It sounds a lot better than just having a standalone sentence that is a complete direct quote. All right, I've gotten a lot of questions about support sentences. I've tried to give you some examples in the previous modules, but here was another example. So if you look on the left, this was the student's original post, and then I added my own on the right to try to build that gap up, create a bridge between the topic sentence and the evidence. So a good diet includes protein, fat, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and water. Jay Taylor stated, I know that the people of India have a life expectancy less than half that of the people of Australia, and that the people of India eat half as much protein as the average Australian. There's kind of a gap between that topic sentence and then the evidence. The topic sentence is talking about a good diet and what it consists of, but then the evidence is just talking about protein. So I don't know if this isn't my topic, so I'm not an expert on it, but I just kind of threw in my own knowledge, I guess, on the right to show how it could bridge and lead into talking about a diet and what it consists of, and then bridging it into talking more about protein. So a good diet includes protein, fat, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and water. However, many people, particularly vegetarians and vegans, lack the recommended amount of protein. So I mentioned protein more closely before going into the evidence. And then the evidence, I crossed off the first name. Remember, when you are listing your sources, whether it's in text citation or end of text citation, you only use their last name. Taylor stated, I know that the people of India have a life expectancy less than that of the people of Australia. Sorry, I misread that. Less than half that of the people of Australia, and that the people of India eat half as much protein as the average Australian. And then this person was also missing their page number. So remember, when you have a direct quote, you have to have your page number. Another thing with direct quotes, some of you might not be putting page numbers because your source didn't have a page number because it was a website maybe. When that happens, websites usually have section headings. So if you scroll down the site, there's headings that separate the different sections. So in this example, Central Michigan University is the source. There's no date. The section that I found this information in was under auxiliary enterprise, and then you put the paragraph number. So look at exactly how that is written, and make sure that if you're using direct quotes from a website and they don't have page numbers, you still have to say where you can find that direct quote. So you can't get off the hook with direct quotes as far as where a person can go and find that information. So please write that down. That's important that you have that format correct. All right, numbers. APA style generally uses words for numbers below 10, so spell out numbers below 10, and then numerals for numbers 10 and above. But there are some exceptions. So one of the exceptions is if there's more than one number in the sentence, it would look weird if you had one spelled out and one numerically written. So for example, if you look on the right, ranchers spend approximately 10 hours a day, 7 days a week working on the ranch. If you were to spell out 7, but then keep 10 as a numeral, that just probably wouldn't look right. So I would definitely spell both of those out. When numbers begin a sentence, they have to be spelled out. And if you have questions with number formatting, remember, go to the OWL Purdue Writing Lab, go to APA, go to Formatting and Style Guide, and then go to APA Numbers, and it has all the information you need on how to incorporate numbers. And most of you have numbers in your paragraphs because you're using facts and science and all that stuff as evidence. So make sure that you are formatting your numbers correctly. I wanted to point out that you shouldn't have I believe or I think statements. Remember that not only is putting your writing in first person, which you want to try to avoid, it just sounds a lot stronger to come out and say what you want to say. It just makes for a better argument. So you have, I believe that beef protein is the way to a healthy life versus beef protein is a source to a healthier life. So the second option, I took out the I believe statement, and then also just make sure that you're very specific. Beef protein is the way to a healthy life. That makes it sound like that's the only way to a healthy life. And that's obviously not true. So you want to make sure what you say is true. It will help your argument as well. So beef protein is a source. There's other sources also to a healthier life. I mean, somebody that eats beef they're not guaranteed a healthy life, but they could have a healthier life from eating beef, if that makes sense. All right, this is the last page for today. I just want to remind you to have that thesaurus out when you're working. It is a lifesaver for me when I'm writing. Not only does it help me from repeating words over and over again because I can find a different way to state it, it also helps me sound more scholarly, I guess, when I'm having a hard time or difficult time. That's what I'm going to talk about on this slide, actually. When I'm having a difficult time thinking of a better sounding word. So in this example, this is also just a pet peeve of mine, but people use the word harder and hard, but that I like to reserve that for like the way a surface feels. So the surface is soft, it's hard. When I'm talking about something being more difficult, use the word more difficult or more arduous or something like that over it was harder to do or it was hard for me to do this. It just sounds a lot better, and that's just a pet peeve I've always had. And I actually had a professor back in my undergraduate days tell me that, and since then it always stands out to me. All right, that is it. I hope you guys um, learned some stuff, got some good notes, and now you can apply it to your essay.